Okay folks, I'm just going to make the sourdough bread. So to get started, I like to use a balance. You don't have to. I'll give you the amounts in volume as well as in grams. I like this recipe because it's very easy to make. Okay, so here's what I do to start. Okay, so here's my balance. Just gonna turn it on. And then I put my thing. Now I have flour in here already. Kind of ignore that because that's gonna be kind of part of my, I do this pre-soaking of my flour because that's what they say you should do. Because it's all fancy flour, but whatever. So just pretend you don't even have your flour. So just start with your bowl and then you can start weighing stuff out. So the amount of water that you have to add, I think it ends up being roughly 3 cups. No, it doesn't. I don't remember. It's 300 grams of water. So I just like got it on my scale and now I just add it. Okay, so that's 300 grams of water. And then you can add your flour as well, and the flour will be 400 grams. Okay, so the amount of water you add to your sourdough ends up working out to about 1 1/4 cup of water, which is equal to 300 grams of water. The amount of flour is different. But before we get to that, I just want to show you the sourdough that I'm working with. So this is my sourdough. I haven't named her yet, but you can see that it's it's pretty healthy. So you want to put your sourdough in when it's just kind of peaked and looks like it's starting to sink a little bit. So that's what this looks like now. You can see it's got some pretty good bubbles, but it's hanging on to those bubbles. And if I stir it, you'll see how gloopy it is. You'll get a feel for the texture. So that is some excellent gluten development, my friends. So I'm going to put 1/4 cup of this stuff in as well. Okay, so remember we started with 300 grams of water. That's about the same as 1 1/4 cup of water. And now we'll add, so now we're gonna add the salt. Okay, so it'll be like roughly, it's 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt, or 8 grams. And you know what, like the less things I can get dirty, the better. So I'm gonna actually stir it before I continue because I like it to be like really well distributed. So I'm mixing it with the water and stuff. 3 cups of flour or 400 grams. That's it for the weighing, because now the next part is the thrilling part. I'm gonna add my sourdough. So this is like my magical sourdough. She's so happy right now. I'm gonna stir it down just because I'm gonna measure this. I want the volume to not include all the gas and stuff that's in there. Gassy. So I'm gonna add about like 1/4 cup of my starter. And I'm gonna be generous because I love it. I'll just add that in. And that's it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir it up real good. And you may find that you have to like get in there with your hands, which I will. So once it's stirred up, like this recipe is kind of awesome because you don't actually have to do any there's no kneading per se. Instead, what you're going to do is just, you're going to stir it and then let it sit overnight. So once I do that, I let it sit for about 12 hours, 12 to 18 hours. So I'm doing this in the evening. It's going to go overnight. And the reason you want to let it sit is because now I've put that sourdough in, like the starter, and the starter was kind of getting hungry. So now it's going to spend the night just feasting on all the flour that I've given it. So it's going to get it's going to start out like a sort of wet dough. So don't expect it to be like easy to work with. Like it's not the kind of dough where you would just throw it up in the air and make a pizza crust out of. It's kind of gross and gluey, but that's okay. It's supposed to be. So you kind of incorporate it, just make sure everything's mixed together real nice. And then you're gonna let it sit overnight. And because you're letting the sourdough eat all this flour, you're gonna end up with a really like happy sourdough culture, you know, growing away in here. So your dough is gonna ferment, and that fermentation is what gives it that sour vibe. So now if your house is really warm, or your kitchen is really warm, you probably want to put it in a cooler location to sit for that long. Overnight is gonna kind of rise up, and then tomorrow we'll reconvene and I'll show you how to make it. But right now it just needs to ferment and develop its delicious flavors. So I will see you in 12 hours.